You
I
read.
agree with that. I think, I don't think life has any meaning. I really don't think it does. I really don't think so.
So
I really
when you
don't.
look at it from the big picture, like
Yes.
we are in a teeny tiny little rock
Yeah,
floating in the
for
middle
sure.
of nowhere, and who knows what the definition of time is? We have no clue about that, and still we are arguing, fighting that about this is right, that is right. Nothing's right, man. Chill. There's nothing happening. It's the
No, I totally agree with that. I totally 100% agree with that.
it's the deep interesting deep understanding that nothing really matters, and that gives you the freedom to explore stuff in a
Yeah,
different
for sure. For sure.
vibe.
In the US right now. So I think whether it's the Prussian system or whatever system, that we have to recognize the fact that education is political. That there will be groups who will want certain kinds of citizens to be, supported, nurtured, developed. And there will be tensions there, right? I mean, I would personally lean towards a more open democratic system where there is an open discussion of ideas, where, and through that you get the best ideas. But that's my perspective. And depending on who is in power or not, they're going to determine what that's going to look like. Needs to do, because a society cannot develop curiosity if we say, oh, you can't question this or you can't question that. So creating a space where one is allowed to question, like, why should things be this way? Why can't there be something else? That's a really powerful thing. But a lot of times in school, you're not allowed to ask questions, fundamental questions.
Correct.
In society, we don't allow that. Like, oh, no, you shouldn't talk about that, right? And then you will obviously you will squelch curiosity.
Do you know the Japanese concept of ikigai?
Vaguely, tell me a little bit more.
So, long story short, it means the reason for your existence. I do not believe it wholly, but I believe they do have a point. So, it's like the
Okay.
intersection of three things: what the world needs, what you are good at, and what you love.
Cool. All right. Yep. That's very interesting. So,
What is your ikigai?
no, I get it. I get where the question is going, and I appreciate that. So, even though like I said, I'm not well versed in the term. I've heard it, I've come across it, but never really dug into it. But the three things that you talk about, I think, really do make sense to me, because I've thought about these three things. So I think what I value most of all is learning and education. And education, is more sort of standardized as in schools and stuff. I think I truly, truly value learning. I think that's something that stayed with me ever since I was very young. And I am a professor of education right now. I love to play, and I love to play with ideas and to learn. I think that's a sort of a core value that I have that keeps me curious, keeps me engaged with the world. I think hopefully, makes me a better person in that regard. And I think that the world needs that hugely. Even from your introduction, when you talked about like why you started this series, that we live in a world where there is a lack of communication, a lack of sort of understanding. You might be educated or have a degree, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are being sort of productive or useful in many different ways. And we see a lot of misinformation, we see radicalism, we see people getting into their little whatever they think deeply about and are unwilling to interact and engage with other opposing or different points of view. And I think learning and education and that open-mindedness becomes a really important part of it. And if I have like a passion, I think I really like engaging with ideas, and I like engaging with people. I love that. And I think I'm good at that. I'm good at communicating ideas. I'm good at figuring out ways of thinking which connect with other people. So at the intersection of all those, we'll end up being an educator, being a teacher, an author, a writer, a blogger, whatever it may be, as an opportunity to both engage with the world, to learn from it, but also to give back in some way.
So you are an n number of things you are, and from what I looked up to learn about you, you are particularly an education designer. You don't see that often. Education designer, and we all have been almost most of people who have been brought up in a school, regular school system, even I know the hard times or why I hate school so much. We all
Okay.
like. I was listening to one of these videos by this scientist Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he says that children come out of schools as though they have done chores. It's like, oh my God, this is not the thing for me. We are not excited to understand things. We are not excited to learn about our environment. What made you shift your life to a education designer? Like nobody thinks of that, at least not a lot many people
Right.
think of that, and not a lot many people want to go down that route. But why did you
Sure.
shift down that road? First of all, let's go there.
So, yeah, I'll keep it brief because it's a longer story. But when I was growing up, I grew up in Assam and Mizoram and Delhi, in India when I was a kid. And I loved learning everything. I didn't care what it was. It was art history, it was science, it was math. I found everything super exciting and interesting. Literature, cinema, you name it. I was just gorging on stuff. And then I ended up, if in India you're good at science and math, you end up going to engineering or medicine. So I ended up in engineering. And there was literally, I've talked about it publicly, so it's not a surprise. There was literally the 4 worst years of my life, right? You took somebody who was 18 years old, who truly, truly loved to learn, and you just sort of beat it out of that person. And that is a tragic story about public education. I mean, like the educational systems that we have developed. And so at the end of that, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I ended up saying that, okay, I'm interested in film. I'm interested in math and art and science and all of these things. Maybe I can make educational film. So Neil deGrasse Tyson is a good example. He remade Carl Sagan's Cosmos, and I grew up watching Cosmos. So I said, all right, I'm going to make things like Ascent of Man. I'm going to make things like Cosmos or Life on Earth. So I got into a design program in IIT Mumbai, the Industrial Design Center, to get my master's and to become a filmmaker, right? As a science educator. And that's when I first started working with the Macintosh computer. So I'm talking way back when. This is 1988, when the Mac was pretty new. And I felt in some vague way that there was something interesting going to happen at this intersection of technology. This is before the internet and so on, technology and media and learning. And so instead of becoming a filmmaker, I said, I want to devote my attention to this new emerging technology, with the particular focus of how it can be used for education. And so there is this element of design. So you talk about this idea of the educational designer, that any kind of an educational environment, whether you're making a film, whether you're making a podcast, whether you are creating a lesson plan for a classroom, whether you're designing a school, these are all intentional moves that you make, right? So when you're coming up with the podcast, I'm sure you just didn't say like, okay, I'm going to just start a podcast. You thought about it, you did a lot of research and thinking, and before you sort of designed what this could be, what this conversation could be. And so I think all education is really about the future, and it's always about making things that we have and making them better. And that's what a designer does. A designer is always looking at the world and saying, how can I make this world a better place? Right? And so when I call myself an educational designer, because I do a lot of different things, I do research and I write and I teach. But at the heart of all of these is always this idea of taking the systems that we have, the processes that we have, the experiences that we create for our students, and making them better. And that to me is the core sort of idea that lies behind design. It's about making things better. And so I work in education. So I don't design chairs. I don't design, like a product designer. I don't design posters or, like a graphic designer. But what I design or I'd like to work in is educational spaces. And so that's why I call myself an educational designer.
It's hard to get people's attention to study. People see that as a hard thing to do. How do you make uh, education more loving, or how do you make people more curious, if I am to ask? Because that's what I feel most of our education is. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. You have dedicated almost 2-3 decades to this, but what I feel is that if you have curiosity from the inside, that's what we need to teach to people, to learn to
Yeah,
understand things.
you know, I think humans are curious by nature. I mean, we are born curious. You take any average child, they are curious about the world. So I think what we have done in an educational systems, we are spending years stamping out that curiosity, right? So I don't think you have to teach anybody to be curious. I think what we are doing is we are teaching them to be not curious. All we have to do is remove those shackles and people will be fine. That's the way I would see it, right? And so if you think about, and this is not just true of humans, this is true of other mammals, as well. If you have a pup, you'll see that a pup will play. Play is their form of learning. And I think humans do the same thing. Our way of learning is through play. And what we have done is removed play from schools, removed play from learning. We've said, look, okay, for 30 minutes in a day, you're allowed to go out and recess and play. But we don't see, if you talk to scientists, if you talk to mathematicians, talk to poets, they'll often talk about what they do in terms of play. That I was just messing around. We don't have space to mess around, right? And learning happens in that messing around.
What?
And so to me, the issue is not how do we teach curiosity. We are curious. As a species, we are incredibly curious. The question is, how do we channel that curiosity? How do we enhance that curiosity? How do we support that curiosity? Because curiosity comes in many different forms. Also, which are the right kinds of curiosity and which are not. Those are the kinds of things that we should be thinking about, not about teaching curiosity, because I think we are, for the most part, humans are a very curious species.
So is that an inefficient system that we are talking about? Because it's killing that curiosity. Was it by design?
Oh, for sure.
Was it intentional, or was it just, what do you think?
I think it most probably is a combination of well-intentioned people taking decisions, and then the system becoming quite rigid and unwilling to change. So it's harder to change things once they become institutionalized. I don't think anybody started out saying, oh, we need to kill people's curiosity, right? People started with a very well-intentioned approach. They said, oh, students need to know how to read and write. They need to know how to do math. They need to know something about science. And next thing you know, you have this long list of things that you want kids to get to be functional in a modern society. And we don't truly understand how people learn. So we make up that, oh, we're going to make you sit in classes and we're going to push this stuff into your head rather than let it be something that you get curious about and learn through that, right? And I think that, so I don't want to point fingers and say that, oh, people intentionally made it a horrible system. I think it's more a question of wanting to do good, having a misunderstanding of how learning happens, and then also wanting to do it at scale. There are lots of those things there, I think, that come in.
Before, when I was researching about you, I did a little bit of digging into the history of the education system, how it came into being, and the American system of education, and how it was taken from the Prussian model of education, and that was because the ruler or the king wanted their citizens to follow the king. Prussian model of education is what got translated, and it's what we are mostly doing to the world right now. And that was, in a way, indoctrination of people to follow their king, to follow orders. I mean, if you look up at the comparison, there's a lot of comparison. Like when you go to schools, you have recess times, you have to sit down for 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever, attend classes, and then you have to, when the bell rings, you are free to go do your stuff and then come back. And this is what typically happens in a normal workplace in all over the world. So if you think about it that way, it kind of connects. So do you think that so any system is good? It might have been good for that time, right? And we are constantly upgrading it. And do you think we are still following that kind of a system? Because the connections are apparent.
Right. No, I wouldn't deny that. I would just say that, I have a friend who is a historian of education. So whenever people make arguments like this, he pushes back, because one thing he says is that history shows that even within that system, there are lots of groups who were trying very different things, right? So it's not that it's as unitary a system as we make it out often to be, right? So to be fair about that. That said, yes, I mean, at some level, education is a highly political activity, right? Um, we cannot deny that. It is a political activity in the sense that you are developing the next generation of your citizens. And people in power, whether they be governments or their rulers, have definite ideas of what they want their citizenship to be, right? You could have a
Right.
very benevolent democratic system which says we want our citizens to be open-minded, fearless, active, engaged citizens in a democracy. You could have a democracy at the same time which would say, oh, we want our citizens to be like have a different understanding of history than what actual history is. We will do myth making, or you will have something like the socialist or a communist system, which will be completely top down and it's going to be always praising the government. These are political decisions, right?
Okay.
And they come down to core political values and what the nation what a country believes in. I mean, you can see this in India right now. I mean, there is a huge back and forth about the history of India. Who should teach it? How should it be taught? What is the true history of India? Who are the true heroes? Who should we be respecting? That's a thing that's happening right now. It's happening in the US right now. So I think whether it's the Prussian system or whatever system, that we have to recognize the fact that education is political, that there will be groups who will want certain kinds of citizens to be, supported, nurtured, developed. And there will be tensions there, right? I mean, I would personally lean towards a more open democratic system where there is an open discussion of ideas, where, and through that you get the best ideas. But that's my perspective. And depending on who is in power or not, they're going to determine what that's going to look like. So it is a very political thing. I mean, India is a great example. US is a great example of huge battles over what it means to have a curriculum in history or what should be taught in science.
I mean, something is always better than nothing, right? It's always good that we have at least some systems, and there are always people who are trying to improve it, such as yourself, and you're doing. So, what makes a really good education system? What changes can we make, or how can we inspire people for learning if that is the true value of education?
So to me, a good educational system starts by respecting the learners, right? That starts by respecting that learners have agency, they have intentions, they have passions, they have curiosities. And our job is to nurture those passions and curiosities. Learning is hard. Trust me. If you want to learn, how to differentiate an equation, that's not natural. It's not like us learning a language. We learn language instinctively, right? You just throw a kid into a world where the people are speaking, they will start speaking. That's biologically innate in us. A lot of the things that we learn are not innate. We have to learn them. There has to be effort. But that effort, as long as it comes from the learner, it's going to not seem like effort. It's going to be something that they want to do, right? So the first step is starting from the learner. Second, I think there are certain core sort of ideas that we know that are important for learning, which is a transparency and openness to ideas, a willingness to engage in a conversation around differences, because that's the only way you're going to grow, is that if you allow for those. So if you look at what happens when you publish a scientific research paper, it's a systematic way of disagreeing with each other. So when I submit a paper to a journal, the reviewers say, oh, this method was wrong, this was not right, they need to improve this, they need to do that. So they're critiquing, and then I work on improving it. And so that's a great model for how we need to think about education and learning, as that all of us are co-creating, co-building a better understanding, right? Rather than this thing like my way or the highway, which is what most of school becomes, which is where the whole political thing that I talked about comes up.
So most certainly. Uh, so what does it? How can we inspire people to become lifelong learners? Or how can we inspire people for change? Because we see that information is abundant now. As you said, the one major difference that has happened over the past 2-3 decades is that information has become abundant. But still, that yearning for learning has not gone up that much. Maybe, as you said, it is extra work to learn, but not on certain topics if it's your passion. So in that sense, I think it's better to think that education should be individual. It's not like one teacher, one classroom. Am I right to think in that sense?
Well, I mean, the thing is, education is individual in terms that it is an individual who is learning, but most of our learning happens in social context, right? It happens in the context of family, in the context of community, in the context of classrooms. And in fact, if you think about this idea of the democracy of ideas where different ideas can bump against each other, right? You and I can have a disagreement and we can discuss it and talk it. And that way you get a better understanding of your idea. You get a better understanding of my idea and you come up with your own conception. So yes, the learning is happening at the individual level, but it is happening because of the social interaction with ideas and with people. Does that make sense? So to me, the idea that, that we could have like an AI system, which would be your bot, which could be your study buddy or whatever, which could teach you everything is fundamentally mistaken, because it fundamentally mistakes two things. One, how education or learning happens, which is a very social activity. And two, it mistakes what the value of education is, which is to take some content and put it in your head. No, the value of education is to make you a productive citizen in the world. And that requires interacting with people, right? And to be able to communicate your ideas, to be able to share your ideas, and to be able to discuss and argue and make your point. Those are very social things. So I don't think you can remove that necessarily.
Yeah.
And coming back to your point about curiosity and interest and how to get people to do that, I think that's a big role that schools need to do, which is, and society needs to do, because a society cannot develop curiosity if we say, oh, you can't question this or you can't question that. So creating a space where one is allowed to question, like, why should things be this way? Why can't there be something else? That's a really powerful thing. But a lot of times in school, you're not allowed to ask questions, fundamental questions.
Correct.
In society, we don't allow that. Like, oh, no, you shouldn't talk about that, right? And then you will obviously you will squelch curiosity.
Is that happening because of our system?
I think it's a combination of things. I'm sure it's partly because of who we are as a species and how we think and how we engage in groupthink. When somebody, when a whole group of people agree with something, we also think that must be right. I think it happens because of systems and structures that we have built, which enforce certain ways of thinking and say this is better than other ways of thinking, instead of like truly having an open conversation about things. I think it's a combination of things.
Yeah, which is very weird, right? Because I was reading this book, Why Facts Don't Change People, and it's partly
exactly.
it's partly because of this groupthink idea. Because when you disagree with the whole group, it's almost as if like somebody is stabbing you, because evolutionarily looking at things, we have always been in groups, because humans thrive in groups. If you are alone in a forest, you'll be killed. So that's there in our engraved in our DNA to agree with our group. But the truth or the better way of doing things might be to object and stand strong with your opinion.
Well, it depends, right? Because here's the thing, like, the issue is not as much of standing with a group as the way we talk about other groups. Like, it's when we within our group, we can disagree with each other. It's fine. It's like agreeing with the other group who have a different opinion. That's the problem when you think about it. Because my identity is so connected to my group that somebody who has a different opinion and they're from a different group, that's the problem. So we always have this ability to other some other group, right? Whether it's on the basis of religion or the color of their skin or gender, whatever it may be, right? So we do that essentializing there. And groups have value, don't get me wrong. Groups
Oh,
have value because
and
they, not just in
100%.
terms of security, or like, like lions attacking you or something, but in terms of social cohesion, all of those things. There is value there. But if they become blinkers and they prevent you from seeing good ideas which are somewhere else, or prevent you from seeing the humanity of another person, that's a problem, right?
But it's not just about the other group. Sometimes you have to disagree within your group either, because I think what mostly happens is you can't nod your head to everything that a group says. But I think as humans we've lost that somewhere along the way.
I Yeah, I don't know whether we lost it or we never had it, but the pressure to conform is very strong. I get that. I mean, you can't imagine the number of WhatsApp groups I've left because I just didn't agree with what was being said, and I tried to put my point forward, and it became like a huge mess. And like, something, I don't need this. I really don't, because I'm not going to change your mind on this, and
Can you
I'd
tell me a
rather
story?
leave that group.
Can you
Nah,
tell
it's
me a
okay.
story?
I mean, you can imagine. Nah, these are, it's friends of mine and stuff, family members sometimes. So there will be, this is India, right? I mean, so you can imagine what are the kinds of things that are being discussed there, right, in those groups. Religion comes up or something like that comes up, and somebody makes a comment which is very demeaning to, let's say, either women or to other religions, and I can't keep shut. And so I feel forced to say something, but the moment I say something, it becomes a huge, and I don't want to deal with that because I'm not going to change your mind. You are so entrenched in your things, and I don't think they're going to change mine either, to be fair,
But
right?
at that point, I think what's missing is that open dialogue to
I
change your
agree. I
mind,
completely
right?
agree. I completely agree. I completely agree. So, in fact, once, um, this is an interesting one. Well, I never followed up on it, but you might enjoy this. So somebody made a comment on Facebook about something, and they said, "Who's willing to debate me on this?" And it was a point of view that I disagreed with, right? And I came up with a set of rules about how we would debate this. Okay? And the rules were as follows: that A, it would not happen on Facebook. First rule. It will not happen in public. Second rule, you will first describe what you think my point of view is, and I will describe what your point of view is. And you have to describe my point of view in a way that I will agree, and I say, yes, Raj, you are right. That is what I'm trying to say. And I have to describe your point of view. I don't have to agree with you, but I have to describe your point of view so that you will say, yes, Punya, this is what I'm saying.
Kind of like switching
So
your
what
roles.
we
You are in the other person's
exactly,
feet.
exactly. And I think that a lot of times I don't have to agree with his point of view, but I should be able to grasp his point of view. And he should be able to do the same, because often the arguments that happen are happening on completely different planes altogether. Person is saying X, somebody is saying Y, and they're just yelling at each other.
So
And I
if you
finally,
can,
I was like, I don't have,
yeah, please go on.
but to me, two things. Like, one, that conversation shouldn't happen in public. Because public means Janta is going to cheer, somebody's going to thumbs up, thumbs down, like, oh, they're going to comment. No.
It's gonna
If you
poke
are
your ego.
genuinely, right, if you are genuinely interested in having a discussion, then these are the rules. Till you completely understand my point of view and I completely understand your point of view, we cannot have an argument. And once we understand that, I think the argument will be very different, because he will see things in my perspective which he hasn't noticed, and vice versa. I will see their humanity, they will see my humanity, and we will still disagree at the end of the day, but it won't matter. And I think a lot of the conversations that we have in the public sphere don't allow that to happen.
Because it's as though you're casting a screen. Your own opinions,
Exactly.
your values. It's acting as a
Exactly.
screen so that you don't grow. You don't. And do you think that's also a blockage in education?
I think so. I think in education, we do not provide enough opportunities for you to hold on to a view that you don't agree with and stick with it for a week and say, oh, what does that mean? It's okay. It's an idea. Just wear it for a week like a jacket. And then say, oh my God, I hate that idea. Okay, at least you wore it for a week. We don't give opportunities to do that.
You
You know,
might
we
go,
don't
you
give
never
opportunity
know.
to that.
Yeah. How can we make schools interesting for children, man?
I think a couple of things, right? I already talked about a few things, like make it driven by the interest of the learner rather than what we think they should learn. And they will end up learning everything that we need them to learn. I think I strongly believe that. I think the other thing is like when we have this age-based classrooms, I don't like those at all. Look at us now. I mean, you
Okay.
are so much younger than me, right? But we are having a genuine conversation here. Like I'm hearing you, you're hearing me. There's that age doesn't matter. And what we do is when they're kids, we put them in these age-based things. And I think that because children develop at different ways, speeds, you know, I think it puts certain kids at disadvantage. And so, yeah, I think these are the few. I mean, just respecting the kids. We don't respect children. You know, we treat them like crap.
How do you think like mastering a skill set is important in education? Because I think mostly what happens is, of course, STEM is required. We need mathematics, we need science, we need history, we need all those stuff. But as a person who's grew up and who did my master's now, I think uh, we could have,
So
I think,
what's
question?
your educational background?
Oh, I did a master's in industrial engineering and I'm working
Okay.
here in Canada now
Okay. And you're undergraduate in?
in mechanical engineering.
Okay. From where?
So it's like almost like you. So I'm trying to find my way out now.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all
I
right.
did
So
my
yeah, go on. Yeah.
yeah, I did my degree back in India,
Okay.
in Cochin University. That's from Ernakulam, Kerala,
Okay.
and
All
I
right.
did my masters here in Canada, Ontario, from Windsor University. And I've been
Okay.
working for 2 years now, and you know the corporate life and trying different stuff.
Sure. No, that's great. So did you grow up? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Kerala, so
Yeah, where?
in Kollam. You know Kerala?
Kollam. Okay. No, I mean I've been there once.
Uh-huh.
So just curious.
Kerala is
Okay.
a beautiful place, man.
It is. It is. I had a great time there.
Do you go to India to vacation often? Are you in US now or in?
I'm in the US. Yeah, I'm in the US right now. I try to
Mhm.
go as often as I can, not as often as I would like. Yeah, it's okay.
Hearing some
Yeah.
background music. Are you doing a Rubik's cube or something? Ah, see, that sort of stuff that we want to talk about.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, skills are important. Nobody's saying skills are not important. If you have to do something like your podcasting, I'm sure you've learned a whole bunch of skills about audio and editing and blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah. That,
Hmm.
those are skills, right? But
Mm-hmm.
skills have to fit within a broader story, right? Just giving you those skills and saying, go learn how to do audio editing without your having a passion or some kind of an interest in podcasting and talking to people, learning from it, that's what gives the skill its relevance.
Hmm.
Like skills don't sort of just sit being relevant by themselves, right?
Hmm.
There might be certain basic skills, but even there, right? Like you know how to drive. Okay, that's a skill, but you need to learn how to drive so that you can get from point A to B. In
Correct.
if you're living in the US, if you're living like my son lives in New York, he doesn't need to drive.
Mm-hmm.
It's a waste of money to have a car over there. So that's a skill that is wasted, right? So I think skills have to be contextualized, and I think that's incredibly important. And that's sort of the reason why you need certain skills. And skills will come and go.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are lots of skills. Like if there was a time when learning to do HTML was essential. Now, WYSIWYG interfaces, you don't need it. Now, with Gen AI, who knows what is going to be needed and what is not going to be needed, right?
That's
So,
another thing, right? The skills are getting obsolete. People take n number of time, a year, 2 year, and as technology progress, the skills are getting obsolete, like what you said.
yeah, but new skills need to come along,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, there was like 10 years ago, if you have told me that there are people whose jobs are going to be their influencers, I would have been like, what does that even mean? And now that there are people making a living out of being a social influencer or a YouTube star or a TikTok, whatever, right? I mean, that's a set of skills, and they've figured it out on their own.
Correct, correct.
It's
So
like nobody was teaching people to how to leverage the YouTube algorithm. They sort of figured it out.
that's the thing. Like once you have a passion for something, as you said earlier, learning is difficult. It's not a natural process. It takes effort to learn
Yeah.
differential equation or whatever. But if you have that passion, if you have that goal in the end, like I want to be podcasting, for example, I'm doing this now. I had to learn n number of things in between, which I did not
Sure.
like for the most of it, but I put my time, I put my effort because I have the goal
Right.
there. I have an end goal there, and the
Right.
education in between becomes more with a flow on my
Right.
point. And that's another thing that, like when you think about it, I think there have been surveys about this too. Like when you get out of a school system, it feels like people say that 80% of what they learned is is not applicable anywhere in their workplace or wherever, and so that's like 80% waste, right?
Yeah, but how do you know which 20% is going to get used? That's the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Ah,
You see what I'm saying, right?
but that's the thing. Like, what is a good age that people can decide? Okay, this is what I want, or earlier you were saying the same thing, that school gets taught at the rate of the lowest student, or the least. You know, there in industrial engineering there is also this thing called the slowest step is the rate determining step.
Right.
And how do we find out that at what 20% we need? That's a question, but there's a lot of ways there. That's what I was trying to find out a common ground there, to see if we can find out what needs to be taught to which kind of children, to finding out what their core strengths are.
Right. I mean, it's not just strengths. I mean, strengths also are, I mean, you could be very talented in something, but if that is not of interest to you, or you don't have the opportunity to do it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and there are lots of things that you can get good at just by practice and because you care for it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So it's complicated. I don't think that you can look for simple answers. That is, I think, the biggest thing in education. We are always looking for simple answers. We are looking for an answer saying, "Oh, talent is everything," or "hard work is everything," or support from society is everything, or from family is everything, or schools are everything. No, I mean it's really really complicated. I think
Mm-hmm.
all of those things play a role, and they play roles in very complicated, complex ways. And I think that we often look for very simple answers, and there aren't simple answers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I
And
mean, you
yeah,
could
please go
be
on.
incredibly. I mean, I love mathematics, or I love physics. I wanted to be a physicist. That's what I wanted to be when I was growing up. I didn't have what it took, or maybe I didn't work hard enough. I don't know. The fact of the
Mm-hmm.
matter is, I'm not a physicist right now, right? Now, whether
But
it was because I didn't have the talent or I
mm-hmm.
didn't work hard enough, I can never tell that, right? I'll never know that. All I know is that it didn't work out.
But something drove you to the point where you are now, right? So you somewhere figured out, like, this is my thing. I want to go this way. And if we can backtrack that and find that at an early stage, maybe that's a good way to, I don't know.
No, I don't know because I mean, if you ask a child, like if you ask 15-year-old me, and you say, "Oh, Punya, do you want to grow up to become associate dean at the Merilu Fulton Teachers College?" I would have laughed at you. I said, "What a dumbass job that is! That's a stupid title and a stupid job." So nobody aspires to be associate dean. You see what I'm saying?
Correct.
Like, well, this is where I've ended up, and I'm very happy. I'm not trying to say that I'm
Mm-hmm,
not
mm-hmm,
happy,
mm-hmm,
but the point is that there are so many points in life where things happen and change,
mm-hmm.
and you grow and evolve along with it also. So to think that you can ask a child or somebody at any age, even your age, you're much younger than me, what you want to be 20 years from now, I think I would argue that you need to be open to whatever is coming next,
Mm-hmm.
and work at whatever you enjoy working at, and then
Okay.
hope for the best, right? So the reason I ended up going to design school, I'll tell you the story. It's actually kind of funny and interesting because I knew I was not happy in engineering. I had another friend of mine, Anand Narshiman, who was also not happy. He and I would both write like science fiction stories and all kinds of stuff, and we were just not like, we didn't enjoy what was going on in engineering school. One day in the civil engineering building, I saw a poster for Industrial Design Center and it said they have a degree in visual communications and blah, blah, blah. And I went and told Anand, like, Anand, man, this looks interesting. We should apply there. And then I didn't do anything. This is before the internet and all that. So you had to send a money order for 40 rupees to get an application form. Anand did that for me and himself. If
Okay.
Anand had not filled out that form, who knows where my life would have gone?
You would have been somewhere else. Okay,
I would
please
have
go
been
on.
somewhere else completely, right? So he filled out the form. We went and gave the exam. We both got called for interviews. There was a mistake that we made where he didn't get in, I got in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So if he would have gotten in, our lives would have been very different. Right?
I get, yeah. So
And now
it's
he's a professor of business in Switzerland. He's doing just fine. Right? And so what I'm trying to say is that the setting goals is tricky because life is messy and complicated. And so what you want is that willingness to always be exploring, to be looking out what's new, what's next, what should I be doing, something like that. I think that's important. And yeah, I mean,
maybe that's what we should inspire people for then, how to keep looking for stuff.
sure, but yeah, I guess so. All I'm trying to say is I think these are complicated, and I think what we need to be thinking about is how do we give it, like education, in terms of education at least, like how do we give opportunities for learners to explore and play and grow and let them figure it out, right?
Okay.
Let them figure it out. And the world is a very unforgiving place also. Let's not forget that, right? I mean, there's a reason why my parents or Indian parents and in general would be like, nahi, do engineering, ye arts karke kya hoga kind of logic, right? There's a reason for that because they know that there are lots of people who are artists who don't make it. While in engineering, at least the coin toss is going to be like, the probability of landing a job and making a living is going to be a little better.
I think the question there is the safety versus
Yeah,
whether you want
exactly.
to
And there
be.
is nothing wrong with safety. Right? I mean, there is this, I'm speaking to you from a tenured position, and at a good university. And there's a lot of safety in that. And that's a good thing. Like at my age of 58, if I were like not sure of what my paycheck is going to come from, that would be like psychologically very hard. And so the point I'm trying to make is these things are complicated, and I think we always are looking for like a bumper sticker answer, right? And there is no bumper sticker answer. It's complicated. There are lots of people like in India like this is actually study. I think Howard Gardner had done this. When in one of his books, he talked about this because he says, like, growing in the US, his educational philosophy was everybody should follow their passion, right? And then let things emerge. And then he goes to China and he finds this whole bunch of kids who have been forced, sort of pressured by the system or by their parents to go into medicine or whatever, engineering, sort of similar to India. So he thought that all these people are going to be incredibly depressed and sad about their work. But he found there was a whole bunch of people who are excellent doctors, who are really good at what they do, who now love what they do. But if left to themselves without the pressure, they would have never gone into that field. So
But-
what he talks about is that story of going to China and seeing this complicated it in his head, that passions can also develop over time. That you can develop a passion for something that you didn't even know existed. Because you put enough effort into it or because you're forced to do it or whatever it may be, right? And so I just want to recognize this fact that we are complicated beings, lives are complicated, and there are not going to be any simple answers. So if that's, I think, part of the problem in education or educational reform or policy is that we are looking for the simple answer. If we do X, then automatically Y will happen. And it
So-
doesn't work that way.
So then what are some of your interesting answers that you found out along the way?
About what?
some educational reform, how we should work, straighten things out, or anything that, like your research
No,
or.
I think I said that last time, which is I think respect the learner. I don't think we do that. Respect the learner. It's basic humanism, right? Just respect each other, respect the learner, respect that child for who they are, and nurture them in ways that they can grow and develop to be who they need to be, want to be, can be, should be. Who knows, right? We do a lot more of sort of top down. I think the world is a beautiful, amazing place full of mystery and curiosity. Nurture that, right? Make them work together in different kinds of situations so that they learn to live and work with each other. That's a very important goal of living in this world. Half the problems in the world that we have is because we don't know how to get along with each other, right?
Social,
And
social, yeah, being
and
social. Yeah, please go on.
yeah, being social, being having your edges rubbed off, knowing that you are going to disagree on things and still be able to find ways to work together. I think those are very important skills, maybe more important than some of the more technical skills that one has, right? Um, and yes, I mean, I completely agree that like just as understanding mathematical proof is hard, understanding a good poem is hard. Writing a good essay is hard. Making a good movie is hard. All of those are really hard work. And so, how do you inculcate in people a sense of accomplishment, a sense of like wanting to achieve quality? Like, whatever I want to do, I want it to be good, right? It should be good. How do you get that? I don't know. There is no magic solution to that. For some people, it might be work like doing it over and over till you get good. For others, it might be much easier. Doesn't It's going to be different for each one of us because we come from different places. We have different talents.
The reason
Right.
I asked you that about education system robs people off of their open-mindedness, because I was watching Noam Chomsky the other day, and he was telling something about like this about our education system, that it produces a line of obedient conformists than free thinkers. Because the way you told, like, people are happy with their lives being doctors, engineers, whatever, all of that, I do not I agree with that point. But the thing is that people do not know what they are missing, because they've been force fed a certain linear way of living, or they're being said like, do this from inside, you're not allowed to ask questions, that's one of the main thing, and you're supposed to follow these amount and number of rules, and that kind of restricts that open-minded human curious thinking that we were supposed to develop naturally. And I think we do not even have a chance to understand what we are missing out. and
For
and
sure.
and
And
so.
that's a very important rule. But there's a flip side to it, right? That's a very important rule that schools do. If you
Mhm.
wouldn't go to school, you wouldn't encounter more than half the things that you encounter in in science and math and ideas in history. And that's what schools do. They might do it badly or goodly, that's not the point. But that is one of the biggest things schools do, is introduce children to ideas.
Mm-hmm. Of course, we need
Right?
math.
Because you would
Of
stay at
course,
home,
yes.
you're not going to get that same thing. You're not. So I think that's an important role that schools play. And do
Uh,
they do it perfectly or well? Of course, yeah, that we can argue. But that's an important role that schools do play.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right, right. You write bit of poems?
Do I? Yeah, I'm a
Yes.
bad failed poet. Yeah.
What got you interested in that?
I mean, I don't think I call myself a poet. I'm not a poet in the classic sense of a poet, which is like, people have their feelings and stuff. I'm not very good at that. I am much better at sort of finding interesting things and sort of puzzling through them. So I do a lot of visual wordplay, which is sort of writing a word so that it can be read same when it's rotated or
I
reflected.
saw that on your website.
Yeah,
Ambigrams, they're
so I
called,
do
right?
that, ambigrams, right? So even the poetry I write will be like, I'll write a poem about like the Fibonacci series, and then the poem will be following the rule of the Fibonacci series. So it'll have one word, then two words, then three words, and then five words and eight words, and then you see how far you can take that before you can't take it further anymore. Or my I like exploring and playing with ideas and
Mm-hmm.
symmetry and patterns, and wherever that it takes me in different directions and different things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but that is just something that I just enjoy doing. It to me, it's like my form of relaxation or
Uh,
meditation.
It's funny.
You
I
know,
think I think that's how creativity works because you're just connecting dots, right? Because you have n number of things, and you're trying to figure out an answer for something, or you're on a quest in a certain path in your life or whatever, and because you have these n number of things going on, your brain sort of just connects.
yeah, maybe I don't know. I think it's for me. This is the best part of it, right? I must have spent, I don't know, 10,000 hours maybe over my years making
Mm-hmm.
ambigrams. I've
Mm-hmm.
never made
Mm-hmm.
a penny from them. Not
yet,
one paisa.
yet it is still fascinating.
Oh, it's great. It's wonderful. It's a great sort of puzzle to live with and play with, and and the pleasure is completely mine,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, and I show it to my friends and stuff, but I don't make a big deal of it. It's on my website. People can see it.
What's the history of ambigrams?
There have been examples going back a while, but I think that the word was coined by Douglas Hofstadter, who is a cognitive scientist,
Mm-hmm.
um, around I think the 70s or 80s, and a couple of people sort of seem to have sort of independently come across it. There's a guy called Robert Petrick, I think, over in New York, Scott Kim, who was a friend of Hofstadter. Then Hofstadter started doing them. And then there are a couple of people like John Langdon and others who are like really good at it. So there's a small community of people who do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've been doing it now. Oh my God, I think I started when I was in grad school, so must have been like 95, 96. So I've been doing this now for 30 years.
And still, have you heard of the idea of synchronicity by Carl Jung?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
It, it kind of drives you forward. You do not know why, because that's how art works, right? Because you love something and you're attracted towards something, you have no clue why. But I'm pretty sure this thing ambigram, although it's not like directly related to your career, it has helped you in moving forward in life.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and again, I mean, if you look at one, it's given me joy. Let's be
Mm-hmm.
very clear about that. It's been
Mm-hmm.
fun. Those are great things to, if you write an ambigram of somebody who you know and you can gift it to them, it's a very personal kind of a gift. People appreciate it. So that's great. Um, and it is connected with sort of deeper ideas of how I think about creativity and how I think about learning and things that way. And I'm also very deliberate in putting it on my website, right? I mean, there are things of my life that I don't put on my website, and there are some things that I do. And so that is my way of showing off. I'm showing off that I'm this cool guy who does education research and writes like deep things and also does this ambigrams. That's part of the image that I'm trying to cultivate, in a very selfish kind of a way as well,
No,
right?
no, no.
So
We
I'm
should
not
never
trying to
use. We
minimize
should
that.
never lose that play. If when we get too serious with stuff, nothing happens. Nothing fun
I'm never
happens
serious
there.
with stuff, man. Very rarely.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Like once you lose that play out of you, once you get like out of cross that line, it's not worth it, right? Because life. What's your idea about nihilism? I want to ask this.
What do you mean by nihilism?
Nihilism. So nihilism is the idea that life has no meaning. Like if you look at it from the big picture, right? I know you
Oh
have
yeah, yeah,
you've read
yeah.
Douglas. You
I
read
agree with that.
Douglas
Yeah,
Adams, right?
yeah,
You've
yeah. I
read.
agree with that. I think, yeah, I don't think life has any meaning. I really don't think it does. I really don't think so.
So
I
when you
really don't.
look at it from the big picture, like
Yes.
we are in a teeny tiny little rock
Yeah,
floating
yeah,
in the
for
middle
sure.
of nowhere, and who knows what the definition of time is? We have no clue about that, and still we are arguing, fighting that about this is right, that is right. Nothing's right, man. Chill. There's nothing happening.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the
No, I totally agree with that. I totally 100% agree with that.
it's the deep understanding that nothing really matters, and that gives you the freedom to explore stuff
Yeah, for sure.
in a
For
different
sure.
vibe.
For sure.
You've read Douglas Adams, right? I was searching through your
Yeah,
bio,
yeah, I'm a big,
and I found Douglas Adams.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
How were his books? Because he kind of writes along this line about like space adventures. I read Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy a bit.
Uh-huh.
Did
Yeah.
you read that
No,
book?
he's yeah, yeah, yeah. When I was growing up, sure. Oh, he's funny. I love. He's extremely funny. He's a very funny writer. Yeah, and smart. So yeah, no, no. Douglas Adams is good. Yeah.
What did you like about him? Because the one that what made me fascinated to him was that like he kind of shifts your perspective, you know, about things and how to view things. You view things in a certain way, and he kind of brings that fictional storyline and kind of changes your worldview. Who's your favorite
Yeah,
writer or
I'm not
author or?
sure. I'm not sure he changed my worldview, um, but his worldview does resonate very strongly with me.
Mm-hmm,
So I
mm-hmm.
would say it's more that way. So
Who's
yeah,
your
no,
favorite
he's
writer or
mm,
something that you read that really stuck to your head and you know?
I don't know. I have much less time to read fiction these days, so that's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of my reading happens in my workspace, and none of that is like really inspiring per se, you know. Um, but yeah, Adams would be there. Though I haven't read him in a while. Yeah, I mean there are lots of interesting writers, but blanking right now.
Okay, okay. Oh, what do you read? Like, what are you currently reading on, or you know?
Man, all my reading right now is related to work, academic research and stuff. So it's like journal articles and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So more from the point of view of what I'm writing right now. So I'm looking up and doing research or just reading stuff so that I can inform myself in my thinking.
What is your project right now? Like your current project, or?
I have too many, man. Too many things going on. That's part of the stress. Yeah, it's a lot happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've been, writing and thinking a lot around what this generative AI means and just trying to wrap my head around it intellectually. Um,
I've been using ChatGPT for a while now, and
mhm.
it's weirdly fascinating, isn't it? Like
What do you use it
you
for?
you know it's n number of things,
Like what?
n number of things, right? Like one use I use is I try to find out who my guest is.
Okay. Yeah, but
See,
GPT may not be the best solution for that.
no, I'm just giving you one example. I'm not saying that I use just that, but I use this as a marker, right? So
Uh-huh.
I can try to hone in my guest. I can do my research. I can ask him and number to write emails. You know how the program works. It just predicts the next word, but it speaks to you in a tonality that's better than humans.
Okay.
Did you feel that?
Not particularly. No.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, at beginning when I used ChatGPT, I felt that it was better, but then Microsoft bought it, and after that, I feel like its capacity has been waning every day, and I read a little bit about it, and there's something called I don't know, I forgot the term. It's called AI washing away. So essentially what happens is the AI gets more data and kind of regress its answers. It kind of gets diminished. It kind of destroys itself.
Yeah, no, I've been playing with it ever since it first came out,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm trying to trying to understand. Just like print media has certain propensities and
Mm-hmm.
social media, television, these all have different strengths and weaknesses, and they constrain or drive our thinking and cognition in certain ways. What I've been trying to sort of figure out is, or think better about, smarter, about what this medium of generative AI is and what implications does that have for us as individuals, for us as societies, as whatever, right? So it's just a. I mean, I've been writing. If you go to my blog, you'll see I've been writing a lot around that. In fact, pre ChatGPT 3, because I've been I found posts going back like almost till summer of that year, before even DPT-3 came out. So yeah, I think it's an interesting technology. I worry. I think I have a lot of faith in individuals. I have like zero faith in groups of individuals. When we get in groups, whether it's a society, community, or whether it's a country, or whether it's a religion, or whether it's a whatever, something goes crazy in our heads where we don't know how to deal with stuff, with each other. And I don't think that we have, as a society or a culture or a civilization, understood how bad we are with these powerful tools. You can just look at social media and how much damage that has caused, right? And I think this generative AI has the potential to cause far, far more damage. And at the same time, I use it. I think it's fascinating. I mean, I don't know how to write computer code. I haven't programmed in 30, 40 years. And I've written working computer programs in Python, a language I don't even know, right? And that's crazy, right? The fact that I could take a 2-pager of a synopsis I'd written and literally immediately translate it into Spanish and Portuguese. That's amazing. It does a horrible job with Bengali, for instance, but it did a great job with Spanish and Portuguese, right? That's an amazing
Correct.
thing that this technology can do, that I can take a picture taken during a solar eclipse of a tree, of sunlight shining through a tree, a picture of the ground, and it can figure out this was taken during an eclipse, and then compute what date it was taken and what time it was taken, all within seconds. That's a really powerful technology, right?
I've even heard stories where like a guy who made like ChatGPT make bots, and it gave it the instruction to destroy the worlds, and it started writing its own language and it was trying to figure out nuclear codes, and they had to pull the plug off that program.
Yeah. It'll lie to us for sure. For sure. I mean, so that's one of the privileges of being an academic, is that I can sit and write about it and think about it and read about it. So a lot of my time now is spent doing that kind of work.
What did you mean by when you trust more in individuals?
I think when we interact person to person, we are actually not too bad. We are not too bad. We treat each other quite very often with respect. We listen to each other. We talk to each other. Something happens to us when we become part of groups. When we become part of groups, we make some groups the other, and us, we are better, they are worse. They are evil people. They are out to destroy us. We are suspicious. We create rules or systems which oppress some groups of people and privilege who we think is our own. And then now you have these powerful tools and technologies. They become tools of oppression of other people.
It's all the proof that we are still monkeys at heart, right? Because I was reading, I was reading, and when we go down to our DNA and our genetics, it's like 99.99% of what we are closely related to gorillas. And when we compare gorillas and bonobos to other monkeys, they have a special characteristics. They kind of separate their own land and they try to battle it out. And it kind of connects. It is the same reason why we have wars and countries now, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Again, it's the same thing. Like we think we have evolved a lot, but still we are still monkeys at heart.